The forest was alive with whispers. Shafts of pale light pierced through the canopy, scattering across ferns slick with dew. Somewhere between the drifting spores and the humming silence, a human lay still, half buried beneath a cloak of moss and thread. His rifle, long and wrapped in rough hemp, rested on a fallen log, its black scope glinting faintly. Every breath he drew was deliberate, quiet as a leaf falling through air. The world here wasn't Earth, but his instincts treated it as home. Through the scope, he tracked movement, shadows shifting between trunks. The aliens were close now. They moved with perfect coordination, three in formation, scanning with bioelectric sensors that pulsed faint waves of blue light. He could almost feel the rhythm of their search, like a heartbeat out of sync with his own. The smallest mistake, an exhalation too soon, a trigger pull too late, and the hunt would end. He adjusted his position inch by inch. His name was Corporal Elias Ward, last survivor of Recon Unit 9. The rest of his squad had been vaporized 3 days ago when their ship fell from orbit. He had crawled away from the wreckage with a cracked helmet, half his rations, and a weapon older than the war itself. It wasn't energy-based, which was precisely why it still worked. Alien shields deflected plasma, not lead. The rifle's steel bolt slid with a soft, comforting click. Elias didn't know if command still existed. The comms array he'd salvaged was fried beyond repair, its circuits warped by the crash's radiation. He was a ghost now, an unwanted echo in enemy territory. But ghosts had purpose, and is still burned behind his eyes. Reached the forest's core, where human intelligence had hidden something the aliens feared. Something buried before the first human warship had even reached these stars. The aliens, tall, armor-clad officers of the Dominion, advanced methodically. Their armor shimmered like molten glass, morphing colors to mimic the trees. Their weapons were elegant, long-barreled instruments that hummed with restrained power. Elias studied them through the scope. Their movement was flawless, but they lacked one thing: unpredictability. They were too perfect, too synchronized. Machines wearing arrogance as skin. He watched the lead officer raise an arm, signaling a halt. The blue light from their visors dimmed as they scanned the forest floor. One of them crouched, running a clawed hand across the soil. Elias realized his mistake. Spent cartridge, glinting faintly beside a root. His heart pounded once. He steadied his aim. The rifle coughed a single suppressed shot. The officer's head snapped back, armor fragmenting in silence. The body folded gracelessly to the ground. The others reacted instantly, vanishing behind tree trunks, their scanners bursting to life in furious pulses. Elias rolled sideways, ducking behind a moss-covered boulder just as plasma bolts hissed through the air, slicing bark into ash. He crawled deeper into shadow, breathing through grit and blood. His left arm throbbed from an old fracture, but pain had long since become a familiar companion. He counted their shots: 8, 9, 10, then silence. Reload. He peeked through a narrow gap, eyes scanning for heat distortions. A faint shimmer betrayed them. 2 left. He squeezed the trigger again. The round hit center mass, punching through an energy core. A flash of white light flared before being swallowed by the forest. The last officer didn't retreat. Instead, it spoke, its voice metallic, translated through a universal channel Elias's implant still barely picked up. "Human combatant," it said. "You are outnumbered. Your survival is statistically irrelevant." Elias smirked. Statistics don't pull triggers. He shifted positions again, crawling toward higher ground. The forest sloped upward into dense fog, where the trees twisted into colossal roots. Every step he took was calculated. He knew reinforcements were coming. The Dominion never left a kill unanswered. They'd swarm the forest soon with drones and hounds. He needed distance, but more importantly, he needed time. As he moved, fragments of old transmissions looped in his mind, distorted recordings from before the crash. Recover the beacon, buried beneath the green line. Activate only if captured. He hadn't understood then. Now he suspected that the object wasn't a distress signal. It was a key. He reached a narrow ridge overlooking the valley below. Through his scope, he saw the alien camp. 6 armored transports, antennas stretching toward the sky like bones. They were triangulating his position, collapsing the circle. His breath fogged the scope lens. He wiped it gently with a gloved hand, fingers trembling not from fear but anticipation. The mission had shifted. This was no longer reconnaissance. It was ignition. Elias unclipped a metallic cylinder from his belt. A smooth, silver device etched with symbols no one had deciphered in centuries. Humanity had found it floating in orbit around a dead moon, long before the Dominion Wars began. Command said it was inert. Elias had never believed that. He'd seen the unease in the scientists' eyes when they spoke its name, the Obsidian Wake. He thumbed the device's surface. A faint vibration pulsed against his skin, responding to his touch like a heartbeat aligning with his own. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stilled. He glanced once more through his scope. The remaining officer had found the fallen bodies and was calling for reinforcements. Soon, the sky would burn with incoming fire. Elias had to move now or be erased from existence. He slung the rifle across his back and descended the ridge, boots sinking into damp soil. At the base of the slope, the forest opened into a shallow glade. Strange metallic roots jutted from the ground like bones of some buried machine. He knelt beside one, brushing aside moss. Beneath the layers of earth was not stone, but alloy, ancient, cold, human-made. The beacon was real. Above, a low hum built into a roar. Dropships. Blue plasma streaked through the treetops, lighting the mist in violent hues. He could hear the alien command frequency again. Surround the target. No vaporization. We want the key intact. Elias pressed the cylinder into a small indentation in the metal surface. The forest shuddered, resonating with a deep, mechanical pulse that felt alive. A line of light shot outward beneath his feet, spider webbing through the soil like veins awakening after centuries of sleep. He looked up as the first dropship broke through the canopy. Its floodlights pinned him in blinding white. Surrender, the metallic voice boomed, amplified across the valley. Elias smiled through the light, hand still on the device. Yeah, he muttered, voice low and steady. That's not really my style. And with a turn of his wrist, the ground beneath him began to move. The forest roared. The hunt was no longer his to survive. It was theirs. The ground vibrated beneath Elias's boots as the metal beneath the forest came alive. Fissures of pale light ran outward in geometric veins, cutting through soil and moss. The air smelled of ozone and iron. He could hear the alien dropships descending, their engines whining in tight formation. Each second was a countdown to death. He stayed crouched beside the activation node, eyes flicking between the silver cylinder and the treetops. The device pulsed faintly now, as though breathing. He didn't know if it was alive or simply obeying a long-forgotten command, but it was answering him, and that was enough. A bolt of plasma hissed past, melting bark inches from his head. He threw himself sideways, rolling into the shadow of a root column. Heat seared his arm as another shot struck nearby, showering him with dirt. The alien officers had closed in. Their movements were efficient, deliberate, like predators closing a trap. They were no longer just searching. They were hunting with purpose. Target located, one of them announced, voice filtered through the metallic growl of their translator systems. Containment priority, Omega tier. Elias steadied his breathing, biting down a curse. Omega tier meant they were ordered not to kill him. That could only mean one thing. They feared what he carried. He pressed the cylinder tighter against his chest, feeling the rhythmic pulse accelerate in response to his heart rate. He didn't fully understand the connection between himself and the artifact, but it was responding to him as if it recognized his DNA, his presence, maybe even his intent. He moved quickly, darting through the mist, zigzagging between fallen trunks and thick undergrowth. The forest that had once offered cover now betrayed him with every motion. Alien drones buzzed overhead, scanning with red light that sliced through fog. He dropped low, crawling through a narrow stream that stung his skin with chemical residue. The forest wasn't just old. It was poisoned, its beauty a remnant of something forgotten. Elias reached for his rifle. The magazine was half spent, rounds slick with condensation. He switched to full metal jacket ammunition, the kind meant for penetration, not precision. Energy shields warped kinetic impacts, but repeated hits could overload them. He had learned that the hard way. He caught movement ahead, a silhouette framed by beams of blue light. An officer stepped into view, spear-like weapon raised. Its armor shimmered with the Dominion's insignia, a serpent wrapped around star. Elias aimed, fired once, then again. The second round punched through the creature's shoulder joint, spinning it sideways. It didn't fall. Instead, it turned its visor toward him, glowing white. Human anomaly, it said, advancing. Your resistance fulfills a pattern. Predictable defiance. Elias fired again, hitting the visor dead center. The alien crumpled. Predictable or not, it was dead. He sprinted forward, grabbing the alien's dropped scanner. The interface was alien, fluid in motion and form, but he recognized enough symbols to guess what it was doing, mapping energy frequencies. The scanner displayed a clear hotspot deep within the forest core, marked by a circular signature. That was his destination. The beacon's heart. Static burst across the comm implant in his ear. A voice, faint, broken, bled through the interference. Elias, this is command. If you hear this, you've reached phase 3. He froze. Command? Impossible. The channel had been dead since orbit fall. Command, this is Ward. Repeat transmission. Activate. Wake protocol. Humanity's contingency. Trust the AI. The line cut off. He stood still, the words echoing in his skull. Humanity's contingency. That meant the Obsidian Wake wasn't just a weapon. It was an insurance policy. Something built when humanity had still believed it could die. He moved again, faster now, guided by both instinct and dread. The forest thinned as he neared the core, trees giving way to colossal metallic structures hidden beneath centuries of overgrowth. Massive pylons jutted upward, pulsing faintly with residual energy. He could feel vibration under his boots, deep and slow, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Then he saw them, the reinforcements. A full platoon of Dominion officers, descending from a transport ship hovering above the clearing. Their armor glowed brighter than the earlier scouts, and their movements were sharper, disciplined beyond measure. They formed a perimeter, cutting off every escape. At their center stood a commander, taller than the rest, its armor inscribed with red markings. Elias ducked behind a broken pillar, forcing his breathing calm. The commander's voice rolled through amplifiers, rich and cold. Human Elias Ward. Your actions violate Treaty Code 7 Alpha. You have reactivated a forbidden construct. Stand down, and the Dominion will preserve your genetic record for study. He couldn't help but laugh, the sound harsh in his throat. You think I'm giving you this thing? You can't even control your own arrogance. The commander tilted its head. We have no need to control arrogance. We control outcomes. Drones fanned out, targeting his cover. Elias grabbed a fragmentation charge from his belt and hurled it toward a cluster of them. The explosion was sharp and immediate, cutting through the noise. He used the smoke as cover, sprinting toward the beacon's core. Blinding light erupted from beneath the ground as he reached the center platform. The metal beneath him split apart, revealing a deep shaft of glowing circuitry. He held the cylinder above it. The artifact's pulse intensified, merging with the rhythm of the ground. Behind him, plasma fire shredded through trees. The commander was closing in. If you proceed, it warned, you doom every system in this sector. Elias hesitated for the briefest moment. He had no certainty what the beacon would unleash. The Obsidian Wake was a myth, a rumor whispered by soldiers who never came back from the Fringe Wars. But myths didn't breathe, and this one did. He slammed the cylinder into the slot. The shockwave that followed wasn't sound. It was pressure, pure and resonant. The air folded, reality bent, and a low, ancient hum rippled outward. The commander staggered, armor flickering. Every drone in the air fell silent. A voice, not human, not alien, spoke through the static. It was deep, vast, and emotionless. Command proxy confirmed. Obsidian Wake initialization, pending override. Elias fell to his knees, dizzy, the world tilting. Above, the sky split with black light, stars warping into strange alignments. The commander shouted orders that no one obeyed. Elias looked up through blurred vision, a grim smile spreading across his face. "You cornered me," he murmured. "Now watch what that costs you." And as the first shadow of the awakening fleet began to form above the treetops, the Dominion's signal went dark. The sky fractured like glass struck from within. Jagged seams of shadow tore across the heavens, each widening with a slow, deliberate hunger. Elias stood at the center of the beacon platform, legs trembling as a shockwave receded into a low, rhythmic rumble. The air shimmered with strange distortions, as though gravity itself was reconsidering its loyalties. All around him, Dominion officers staggered, their armor sparking under the strain of whatever force the beacon had summoned. None of them fired. None of them advanced. For the first time since the crash, the forest was silent. A single shape emerged overhead, an outline so vast it seemed carved into the fabric of the sky. It drifted into view with predatory grace, its hull the color of obsidian soaked in starlight. No engines were visible, no thrusters or wings, only a smooth, predatorial surface adorned with faint crimson veins. Elias felt a pressure inside his skull, as though the ship's gaze, if it had one, rested solely on him. The voice returned, resonating through air, earth, and bone. Obsidian Wake flagship, Tenebrous Ascendant. Initializing threat analysis. Each word was cold and precise, unburdened by emotion. Elias pressed a hand to the platform to steady himself as the cylinder in the activation slot pulsed like a living organ. His heart hammered in time with it, each beat sinking tighter, faster, until it felt impossible to tell where he ended and the beacon began. One Dominion officer attempted speech, but his translator emitted only static. The commander pushed forward, clutching its spear-like weapon. Its armor flickered in panicked waves. "Human," it rasped, voice diminished. "You have awakened an uncontrollable monstrosity. Shut it down before the sector burns." Elias shook his head slowly, not in defiance but in disbelief. "You knew," he said, voice hoarse. "You knew what this was." "We knew enough to fear it," the commander replied. "Your ancestors forged weapons without conscience. You resurrect the same calamity now." Elias tightened his grip around his rifle. The accusation stung, not because it was wrong, but because part of him felt it was deserved. Humanity's history was steeped in reckless creation. The Wake was proof. But recklessness wasn't what drove him now. Desperation was. If there was any chance of surviving Dominion extermination, this was the only path left. The beacon's hum deepened. Symbols spiraled across the platform's surface, shifting in symmetrical patterns. A beam of black light descended from the flagship, connecting with Elias like a tether. His mind blurred at the edges, flooded with fragments, schematics of ships, tactics, battlefields, voices that were not voices at all. He gasped, clenching his teeth as a wave of alien knowledge surged through him. The Obsidian Wake wasn't merely a fleet. It was a single consciousness stretched across machines built for war. A hive intellect engineered to protect humanity at any cost. Yet beneath the cold precision, Elias sensed something else, curiosity. Designation confirmed, the voice intoned. Human Elias Ward. Genetic markers align with Command Protocol 71. Identify operational objective. He swallowed, forcing coherence into his thoughts. Survival, he said. The Dominion wiped out my squad. They won't stop until humanity's gone. Assessment. Acceptable objective. Threat level of pursuing Dominion forces. Critical. Authorization. Granted. The commander stumbled backward. You cannot win, it hissed. That fleet will not obey you. It will consume every living thing until nothing remains. Elias wanted to deny it, but the Wake had shown him glimpses, Fleets drifting without orders, entire sectors sterilized under faulty logic. Control was tenuous at best. Still, surrender would mean annihilation. At least with the Wake, humanity had a fighting chance. "I'm not asking it to obey me," Elias said quietly. "I'm asking it to help me finish what you started." The commander lunged. Elias barely rolled aside as the spear slammed into the ground, cracking metal. He fired twice, the round shattering the alien's visor. The commander collapsed, armor dimming to a lifeless gray. Elias didn't wait to see if it rose again. More officers were regaining their footing, weapons humming with renewed charge. Before they could fire, the flagship responded. A pulse rippled outward, silent, invisible, irresistible. Every Dominion soldier froze mid-step as their armor shut down. Weapons powered off, drones plummeted, and dropships drifted aimlessly before crashing into the distant treetops. Elias felt the shock wave pass harmlessly around him, like a tide recognizing a shoreline. Threat neutralized, the Wake declared, awaiting further directive. Elias looked around the clearing. Dominion forces lay scattered, incapacitated but alive. Part of him expected triumph to rise within his chest, but only exhaustion filled the space. He hadn't saved the forest. He had handed it to a ghost armada with a memory of war sharper than any knife. "What happens now?" he murmured. The platform responded with a deep tremor. More black silhouettes emerged from clouds, each vessel larger and more ominous than the last. They circled the sky like vultures awaiting permission to descend. He felt their attention converge on him, an entire fleet waiting for a single human to breathe direction into the void. "Now," the Wake said, "you lead." Elias stared at the pulsing cylinder, then at the alien-filled clearing. He didn't feel like a leader. He felt like a survivor who had been handed a weapon too heavy for any one man to bear. But humanity needed something greater than survival. It needed deterrence. He lifted the cylinder from its slot. The beacon dimmed, but the fleet above remained poised, listening. "Set course," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "We're going home." The night sky brightened with the awakening of engines older than recorded history. The Obsidian Wake aligned itself with military precision, forming a spear aimed at the horizon. Elias stepped onto the rising platform as the flagship descended to meet him. The forest shrank beneath him, Dominion soldiers still frozen where they stood. He wasn't sure if he'd save anyone today, but he knew the war had changed, and humanity would not face the darkness alone.